Greetings YouTube. Today I'm going to do a review of my Victorinox SwissTool. Now I've actually spoken about this in the past on my channel, but I wasn't using this setup with the camera like this, so I wasn't able to get as close-ups to the tools and things like that. So I thought I'd do an updated review of this particular tool. Now this particular tool is the first generation of the Victorinox SwissTool. They are still in production. They make a couple of different models. I think there are 3 different models available out there. But this is the first generation. And I looked at this thing long and hard before I went and bought one, because when I bought it, it was like 70 bucks, I think, which was a big chunk of change for me at the time. And it's still not a small chunk of change. I don't drop $70 on a piece of gear without giving it some serious thought. And I've had this thing for over a decade, and it is in excellent condition. You can see it. It looks like it's brand new. There is pretty much no wear and tear in this. I carry this every single day I leave the house. This goes in my night eyes pouch on the left side of my belt. And I've shown people how, done a video here before how I carry my gear. This is in that pouch. And I chose this particular model for a number of reasons. The most important, quality, because it's very high quality. It is very heavy. It is not light. Don't get me wrong. It is not a light tool. But it was the quality of the build and the accessibility of the tools. That was the main criteria for me. So what we have here is all the tools that are not the pliers are accessible from the outside. In addition, you see this right here, these are springs which lock in place. So that means every single tool locks in place. And to unlock them, you pull down on this, and then it closes up. All right? So every single tool is like that. That is a wonderful design. It's safe, it's simple, it's elegant, and I really appreciate that. So what tools do we have? Well, the first one I showed off right there was the classic can opener, which I have not used this one, but I have used them in the past, and it has a screwdriver here. And I'm going to have to jump cut this for a second because my battery is about to die. All right, and we're back. Okay, so the next tool up is screwdriver, bottle opener, and wire bender. So you put a piece of wire in there and then you can bend it at a right angle. I've never actually had to use that particular tool, but it's in a lot of the Victorinox line, so it's a legacy piece that I think that has just been around for so long, no one has ever really questioned it. And I'm also not 100% sure that this is anything other than access to let you get to the nail nicks on the other. I think it's just to let you have access to the nail nicks. And this is beveled on one side, flat on this side. And I have used it both as a bottle opener, as a screwdriver in the past. Yeah, that thing is just to get to the nail nick. Now this one is all about sharp things. This is a chisel, believe it or not. And these two are both wire strippers, allowing you to put a piece of wire in there, rotate it, and then strip the casing off the wire. And I have actually used one of the wire strippers once, and I've used the chisel more than once, because not only have I used it to chisel wood, but I've actually used it to very carefully remove stubborn stickers off objects. I've had that. It's been rather good at doing that particular task. And then we have, this is a very large screwdriver, also known as a pry bar, so you can get in there, but it's not particularly sharp. You can see that it's got a distinct flat to it. But it does function as a large screwdriver. I've used it as such. I think I might have used it as a pry bar once. Again, flat on this side and beveled on that side. And then we close it up. And then we have... And here we have the classic Victorinox Swiss Army knife blade, which is still in excellent condition, mostly because I very rarely use it. I carry a second blade, which is the knife on me I usually use to cut things with. So when I don't usually this particular blade very often. It doesn't see a lot of use. So I can't remember if I've used it more than 5 or 6 times in the last decade. So there you go. And we rotate to this side. And oh, did I miss a tool? I did miss a tool. I apologize. Missed a tool. Got to this side and I realized I had. This is a saw blade. Now, one of the nice things about the Victorinox wooden saw blades is that this section here is slightly thinner than this. So this is ground on a slight angle. Which that means is, actually this is thinner than this, that's why I apologize, slight angle in this direction, which means that because this is slightly wider, the kerf means that it doesn't bind up as much. So if you actually have to cut through a piece of wood, it's less likely to bind on you. Square tip, actual functional double roll, and yes, I have used this to cut wood in the field with. Not often, it's very small, but I have used it to harvest wood for like craft projects, things like that. And it does a job in an excellent and efficient manner, and it's still very, very sharp because I haven't used it a great deal. I apologize, I almost missed that one. Then we have on this side, this is the tool I might possibly use the most on this multi-tool, and this is my, got two different files, a file on this side, a file on that side. This is a little finer than this one. And then it has a very fine-toothed metal blade here, and I've actually used this to cut metal with, so it does work. The reason I use it so much is this is really, really good at taking care of your fingernails, because I've lost count of how many times I have been at work and found myself with a fingernail that's a little bit too long for the job I'm doing, because I trim parts with my hands, or I have a nick on my nail, or there's a chip or something, or I left a point when I was filing my nails last time, and this takes care of that in a heartbeat. Very, very useful, and I use it on a regular basis. I probably use this 3 or 4 times a week. Of all the, I mean, seriously, I do. Then we have a very small screwdriver. Comes to a nice point, and this one actually has a bevel on both sides. It's got a small bevel on that side, and then a larger bevel on this side. And not only have I used this as a screwdriver, but I also use it as a very small prying device. Obviously for delicate work, not for heavy duty work in any way, shape, or form. Then we have a fairly standard Phillips head, and I've used this on more than one occasion. In fact, there might be a little wear on this one. Yeah, there's a little bit of wear on this one because now my one disagreement with the way Victorinox does its screwdrivers is the tip on this is shiny and smooth, and I think they should have bead blasted this so that it gave a better grip, because this doesn't give a great purchase on screws. I'm not a fan of Phillips heads anyway, but because of that, this makes this screwdriver a little more difficult to use. You really have to push in and very carefully start the screw so you don't strip it out when you're using it. And I think it would have been a superior if they had bead blasted this tip. I believe Leatherman or Gerber does that. It could be Leatherman, I can't remember. But yeah, that's something I've never liked about this particular screwdriver. And then it didn't have a bead blasted tip. And here we have an awl, and yes, I have used this awl for actually putting holes in leather. And this right here is a bevel, and I've actually sharpened this before. It actually feels like it needs to be touched up a little. And this side, it is a scallop, so you put it in there and you turn it in this direction. And I've used this many times. It's excellent for cleaning underneath your fingernail safely, as opposed to using a knife blade. But it's also good for just getting into a spot that needs a little work. You need to pick something out or something. And this is my go-to tool for that. Used it many times. Very, very handy. And then lastly, we have this tool, which is your classic scalloped serrated edge. It's a very of a scallop on this, and this actually has some tool marks on it because I use this one relatively frequently. I probably use it two or three times a month. And you sharpen it by sharpening the flat, and you can also sharpen it with proper tool in the scallops themselves. And I use this if I need to go after a cardboard box, not to break it down, but say I have to cut a hole in it. And frequently when we have parts at work, they're like fabric. We have fabric in these large cardboard boxes, and you need to cut the side of the box open so you can then slide the fabric out, because the box becomes the dispenser of the fabric, and you have to access it from the end. And this knife is what I use. This blade is what I use to do that with. So it's got a bit of wear on it, and I do clean it after I use it, but still. Okay, next we're going to go to the half-open stage, so I can show you the two rulers. Here we go. And this ruler is American Standard or Imperial, depends on how you want to look at it. And it goes to 9 inches. Just right there is 9 inches. So that's quite handy. It also tells you how large the tool is. And on this side, it is metric. And it goes to 23, just barely. And I've used both of them. And because you can do this, easily, it means measuring things is very simple. And then finally, lastly, we have the tool that we're all here for, which is the pliers themselves. Now, one of the reasons I got the Victorinox is because of this bevel. Because this makes this very, very comfortable. And I'm very much gotten used to this because it doesn't have a spring. That's a downside, but a minor downside. The other thing is that they don't come to an extremely acute point. And Gerber and Leatherman tools and SOG tools, SOG tools, do come to sharper points. I will freely admit that. But I have used it many times to grab things, and the jaws, I don't know if you can see the jaws, there we go. The jaws are parallel there, and then they come to a slight peak, so there's a very slim gap in there. There you can go, you can probably see it. And then of course you can grab nuts with this, and you can cut things with the wire cutters. And I have used the wire cutters both on wire and more commonly on zip ties, because there are zip ties all over the place at my company, because they are temporary holding things in place. And a lot of the time I don't want the zip tie in my place. So there you go, I take this out my pouch, which is on me at all times, snip, the zip tie is no longer in my way. I love this tool, seriously. I have looked at other models that are available in the SwissTool line now, because there are newer models out there, and some of them offer me tools that this one doesn't, and some of them, but they don't. None of them offers me this selection of tools, and all of them now have a curve to them, and I've just come to love the absolute simple, elegant lines of this tool. It is just this rectangle. It does exactly what I want it to do. It is gloriously shiny and chromy looking, and I love this tool. It is my favorite multi-tool I've ever used, and I know people are going to tell me that Leatherman are better, or SOGs are better, SOGs are better, or Gerbers are better, and you're entitled to your opinion, but for me, this is the best thing on the market. So I will end this by telling you, if you don't own one of these, you really should.